visiting us on another edition of
Let's Talk Torah.
Now, even though this will not be a Torah session at the moment, this will be a session on Torah, yes, but the calendar and the time of Yahweh. In the Hebrew, we call it Moedim. Moedim, or appointed times. Appointed time. And to be precise, it is Yahweh's appointed times. So as you can see, the name of this teaching will be Yahweh's calendar from the very beginning. So, with all implications from the very beginning, we're going to take a look at Yahweh's time and try to put together understanding as to what he says time is. And the relevance of his words are that he was there from the very beginning. So if you can't believe him, who else can you believe? The scripture says, if you receive the one whom I've sent, then you receive me. But if you don't receive him that I have sent, then you also don't receive me. In other words, Yahweh gave us Moshe the 10 Commandments, Mount Sinai, children of Israel, Abraham, all of this history so that we can look back at history and obtain truth. So this is only but one example of what Yahweh has already done for us in the way of giving us historical truth of heaven and earth. And so as we begin with my second slide, we're going to look at a website which is called Dial a Moon. Dial a Moon. And the website or the link is there, but just put in Dial a Moon and you will definitely be able to pull up this information. However, I'm taking a look at March of 2021. I have two months as a witness, March, April, March 14th, April 12th of that said year. And we're looking at the time period of 7 p.m., how the moon would look from the earth. Now, for those of you who are studiers of the Torah, you know that this has to be the beginning of a month, because what we see is a slither of light, a small margin of light. And so as we explained, before I want you to really look at the imagery and understand that here is a dark moon. Prior to March 14th, 2021, 7 p.m., this was 100% dark. There was no light before the 14th. On the 13th, you may have a little bit less, but not seen to the naked eye. As well, April 12th, before 7 p.m. on April 12th, that would have been April 11th, April 10th, you would probably have a 100% dark moon, which means the sky is completely dark at night, in the evening. Now, keep that in mind, because later on, for those of you who are watching live and those who are present, those who are watching later on, understand what I'm saying. Time moves. So back to March 14th, I'm going to start at let's start at March 10th. March 10th would have probably have been closer to I don't want to say a full moon, but maybe a last quarter, which the light would have been over here on this side. So in other words, on the left side, signifying that in maybe the next day or two, definitely by the 13th and the 14th, it would have been completely disappeared and then starting on the right-hand side. Therefore, giving us the sign and the signal that time for the full moon has elapsed. It has finished. And so now we're looking forward to a new moon. As David said, in one of the writings, David said, and tomorrow is the Sabbath. Why did he know that tomorrow was the Sabbath? Because he was looking forward to not where the moon is right now, but if the moon has been in 1 or 2 days of complete darkness, then the next day has to be a new month. And if that month, on the first day of the month, it would have been not a Sabbath if we're going to the beginning of the year, but it would have been a new moon. I said Sabbath before, but at some point we'll go back to the celebrations of new moons, and some groups still to this day do celebrate the new moons. According to Amos chapter, I think that's chapter 1, verse 20, and then Hosea chapter 5, verse 20, I think it is. But anyway, and I may be mistaken, but he says, your new moons my being hates, and I cannot smell in your assemblies. And he even cautions us, Israel. He says, I cannot even smell in your assemblies. Take away that defiled celebration, your new moons. All right, but anyway, let's continue. All right, once again, so that we're not too far from the point. March 14th, 2021, 7 p.m. And the reason I go back to 2021 is because we now reside in Africa, in a part of Africa, Ghana, which is right above the equator. Being so, we have a bit more of a difficulty in understanding changes of seasons because, like the U.S., unlike the U.S. have 4 seasons, and those 4 seasons are distinct from each other. Whereas where we live now in Ghana, there's 2 seasons. There's a wet season and a dry season, of which I'm kind of learning the seasons now. I've been watching the trees. I've been trying to pick up on the growth of leaves and flowers, when they happen, when they bloom, and just kind of studying it as we live here now, getting to know and understand from the land we live in. But there is a distinction. Yes, there is a distinction. Matter of fact, we just have entered, last month really, entered into, well, 2 months back, entered into the second part of the wet season. And we have been seeing manifestations of that where the rain has been coming in very heavy. But anyway, we're going to move March 14th, 2021, using the U.S. Because we lived there at that time. My research from that point of the year, and then the second witness is April 12th, 2021. Both time periods, 7 p.m. And we're going to take a numeric look at how does this differ and what is the point. Now, if you have seen me teach on this before, great. If this is your first time, I'm not going to leave anyone out. But what we have is March 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I use a 6-day calendar to look at the numeric numbers of how the days and the setting of the sun and the moon, looking at them through a numeric perspective. Now, starting with the 14th of March 2021, we're going to look at sunrise and sunset. How long is the day? Don't look at all of these numbers. If you see my red, where I have it marked in red, kind of focus in on that. We're going to look at the 14th. These are the dates, 14, 15 through the 20th. These are the dates. This is the time of the sunrise, the next column. Then the next highlighted in red, that's all we're going to focus in on, and the length of the day. And I wanted to go very small in what is highlighted so that we can focus in on those things. Now, our focus should be on the 14th. When is the sunset? 7:32 a.m. Sunrise. Sun is slated to come up at 7:32 a.m. on the March 14th. And then on that same evening, the time of the sunset is 7:27 p.m. Now, how do we understand this? Well, if we look at the time the sun rises and the time it sets, that would be very near a 12-hour day. Day only. We're only speaking about daylight hours. Now, if we're speaking about daylight hours, what is the time period? The time period is 11 hours and 55 minutes, 1 second. That is our time period. Don't worry about the rest of these numbers. They work together for real. But that might be a little bit too busy, so we're just going to focus in on the smaller things so that we can see how it works. Now, 11 hours, 55 minutes, 1 second is very close to 12 hours, which is the reason I started with the 14th, because what we're looking for is a 12-hour day, 12-hour day. I have scripture, we'll get there later. Let's look at the 15th. The time that the sun comes up is 7:31 a.m. If on the 14th it came up 7:32, but the 15th, 7:31, 1 minute earlier. So that means the sun is gaining length. In other words, we're looking at where the equinox. So the word equinox, equal day, equal night. 11 hours, 55 minutes. Is it equal yet? The night still has it. The night have 12 hours and roughly 12 hours and 5 minutes. Or if you will, 12 hours, 54 minutes, 1 second. 59 seconds, I'm sorry. But, so we don't get confused with too much, the 16th, what time does the sun rise? 7:29 a.m. So from 7:32 to 31 to 29, if you can see, the sun is increasing in time where the moon is decreasing in time. So the moon at this point has dominance over the night, as though it really has even more. But if we started even earlier, we would have started probably 13, 14 hours of the night and down to like 8 hours of the day. So now the daytime is increasing from 8 hours to 9 hours, 10 hours long, 11 hours, and now we're almost at 12 hours long. So let's check out the 16th. The sunrise, 7:29 a.m., and it goes down, 7:29 p.m. Well, if we just stop right there, we can see that that's about 12 hours. But if we nitpick and go to the seconds, the sun is now 11 hours, 59 minutes, 37 seconds. We're going to add 2 minutes. Now, again, I'm not going to go too much into the other categories, but what is happening, the sun, moon, the stars, as we will see in Genesis chapter 1, Yahweh, he says he put them for times and seasons, right? So what we're doing now is we're looking at how it moved in increments. Well, some people say only by the sun. Some people say only by the moon, only the stars. Well, you can't see the stars and go by them. So you got to work with the sun and the moon. And the sun, it's a little more difficult to understand movement except for by the day. You can see when it comes up, when it goes down. If you can tell when it's straight up overhead, there's just different parts that you can tell. But the moon is a better target of looking because each night is going to look different from the night before. So, anyway, so we're right about at 12 hours, and then if we add 2 minutes, 18 seconds, not every month go through this, but only at the beginning of the month, a new year, we're going to add this much time to it. It's mathematical equations. So you add 2 minutes to the day before, and then you come up with a projected time. Now, this is how they do maps. Maps of the moon and time. Let's look at the 17th. On the 17th, the sun rises at 7:28. So the sun is now becoming longer where the moon is becoming shorter. And we'll look at that. So if the moon is up, the sun is up at 7:28 a.m., then it goes down at 7:30 p.m. We can see that there is a 2-minute difference between rising and setting. A 2 minutes difference where we can see it. But if we go to even the seconds, we'll see it even better. So how long is the day? Length of the day, 12 hours, 1 minute, and 55 seconds. Then the next day, you're just going to add 2 more minutes to that. So this is how they calculate time and set calendars. Okay, now, we should really understand that, but let's go to the 20th and just really focus in on it and know for certainty. On the 20th, it rises at 7:24 a.m. and it sets at 7:33 a.m. How long is the daylight portion? 12 hours, 8 minutes, 50 seconds. And then we still add time. All right, so let's go to our next calendar. Now, I did this because truth is established at 2 or 3. So, how do we know that March is correct in our 12-hour day? You have to go 1 month before or 1 month after to give 2 or 3 witnesses. Myself, I look at enough time that I can make sure that I'm not mistaken in any way. In other words, what am I looking for? And again, the link is, or you can go to timeanddate.com. That will give you what I have here for any place in the world. This happened to be Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which is on New York time. All right, so we've gone to some other dates. So I have highlighted the 25th of April, the 25th of April. And this is done for every month of the year. So the 25th of April, the sun is rising at 6:34. So we can see that clearly now the time has, the sun is coming up at an hour and 2 minutes earlier than where we started, which was 7:32, I think it was, if I remember correctly. But at least an hour earlier than the month before. Whereas going down 8:03 p.m. So now we have about 13 hours of the day. Here it is, 13 hours, 28 minutes, 41 seconds. Now we're going to only add 2 minutes and 3 minutes. 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Notice that the time is going less and less and less. Not that, I need for you to remember this, but just so that you can see how time is calculated. Here on the 24th, you add 2 minutes and 4 seconds. The next day, 2 minutes, 3 seconds. 2 minutes, 2 seconds, 1 second. Just 2 minutes. Now 1 minute, 59 seconds. And you keep going that way throughout the spring and the summer until you get to the next equinox. So, what are we looking for? In Yahweh's time, we're looking for, where does the new year begin? So what I just took you through was how to mathematically calculate time, Yahweh's time. Remember, Yahweh lives outside of time. We live inside time. Time is important to us because we get 70 to 80 cycles around the moon. Around the sun. That's cycles. Scripturally, now, will everyone die at the age of 70, between 70 and 80? No, that's not the case. You have children who die, they call it stillbirth at birth. You have children who die at infancy or toddler, the different stages of children. Then you have teens, you have adulthood, and people die along all of those stages. So we can't say 70 to 80 years is the lifespan of every person. The life of a person is lengthened through Yahweh, and He gives us, as He gives us breath. Some people are killed, some people just die from disease. Whatever, we all fit into this narrow window of time. Remember that Yahweh has gone from one day, which was 1,000, to 120, to 70. That's 70. And then another 10-year with strength. That's just looking at the biblical terms and how Yahweh says these are based on averages that mankind have. And again, there's a message in that. He's given us a message, but I'm going to continue with the message at hand. So we're going to look at from creation, and we're going to begin to look at Yahweh's language. In this way, we're going to have another witness. How do we calculate time? How do we calculate time? We calculate time by Yahweh's language. If we look at what Yahweh has given us, then we will know time. All right. Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, verse 8, verse 13, 14, verse 31, then chapter 2, verse 4, in that order. Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, one day. And Elohim called the expanse heavens, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the second day. Verse 13, there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the third day. Verse 14, and Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and years. And so there is the two witnesses, the sun, the moon, and the stars. But we use both the sun and the moon just as we do a clock. On the clock you have three hands. You have the hour, you have the minute, and you have the second. And so if I compare the hour to the sun, minutes to the moon, and the stars to the seconds, you hardly see the seconds, whereas on a clock, you can see it because it's moving, because it's much faster. So if you look out of space through a binocular, or not a stethoscope, but telescope. If you look through a telescope, you can see outside the Earth realm, there are billions and billions of stars out there. And based on understanding, those stars are continuing to move. And so I remember teaching, another good friend was teaching, he says, when you get to the point of eternity, then it vanishes again. So how do you ever get to the point of the ever expanding galaxies? Based on science, they say things just continue to expand and just to move. But this has been for thousands of years since Yahweh spoke in eternity. chapter 2, verse 4. These are the births of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that Yahweh Elohim made earth and heavens. Why is this important? If you heard the theme here, what is the theme? Evening, and there came to be morning. One day, evening, and there came to be morning. Second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day. And we know that man was created on the sixth day. And then what did he do on the seventh day? He rested. And so if he rested on the seventh day, then we must also realize that there is the Moedim, or appointed time, that Yahweh started with the last day as a time of rest. Why? Because he did all of his work in 6 days. There we go. All right. Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 through 6. So if we begin to look at day 1, the starting count, there's a lot of teaching when it comes to the calendar that you start with the new moon. In a way, yes. In a way, no. What I mean is this. The new moon is the conjunction or the completely dark moon. That is completely opposite of a full moon, a fully lit moon, or a fully dark moon. Those are polar opposites. And so therefore, do we start our count there? Well, if the moon is dark for 2, at the most 3 days, which one do you start your count? The first day, second day, or possibly the third day? And there's some things, excuse me, there's some things that we must observe, like when he says count 14 days, count the 10th day, count the 9th day. How do you start counting with dark moons there? And if you start counting dark moons, hypothetically, if there's 3 dark moons that month, do you start on the first, the second, or the third? And how do you know which is which? What if you missed it, if it was cloudy, for whatever reason, you was too busy, and you didn't see it the first night of dark moon, but you did see it the second or third night of dark moon? How do you know that that wasn't the first? Opposed to a month where there's only 1 dark moon. How do you know that there wasn't 2 other dark moons? It presents a problem. All right, so as we begin to look at where do we start our count? And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon in the land of Mizraim, saying, this new moon is the beginning of new moons for you. It is the first new moon of the year for you. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, on the 10th day of this new moon, each one of them is to take for himself a lamb according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household, and if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to him or his house take it according to the number of beings, according to each man's need. You make your count for the lamb. Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year-old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats. last bullet. And you shall keep it until the 14th day. So now you're hearing numbers. Of the same new moon, then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall slay it between the evenings. Very important information here. And it shall take they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel, the frame of the door, of the houses where they eat, or they eat it, and they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire, with unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, nor boil at all with water, but roast it in fire, its head with its legs and its inward part, and do not leave of it until morning, and what remains of it until morning you are to burn with fire. Now, I'm going to tell you right from the start, as I begin to decipher, that this is Yeshua. This is all about Yeshua right here. And we're going to take a look at how we see Yeshua right here in Exodus chapter 12. All right, so first of all, it's the new year of Yahweh's timing, not man's. Who starts the year in the dead of winter? I mean, not Yahweh, but the nations of the earth, yes, they do. But is that truly when we should start our new year? Let's check. Well, we went through seven different viewpoints where it says, in the evening, in the morning is the first day, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And then I didn't go all the way to the seventh day because we know the seventh day, the same language. So if Yahweh gave us 7 themes of from evening to morning, what are our instructions when it comes to calculation of one yom, one day? In a day, we have cut it into parts as well. Before the day comes dawn. So there's dawn, then there's morning, and then we have daylight hours. But then we have evening, twilight, however you want to say it, and then nighttime hours. And so we have taken that 24-hour period and we have cut it into sections so that we can also better understand time. So in this way, we know time, and Yahweh says, this new moon is the beginning of new moons for you. It is the first month of the year. Now, who cannot understand that? First month of the year. First month of the year means it is the new what? Year. It is the new year. And we know that this is leading up to what? Passover. The next instructions, well, it says on the 10th day, again, very important. On the 10th day, what? Take a lamb. So I want you to keep that in mind. Take a lamb. So the household is to select a lamb on the 10th day, and that lamb has to be perfect. It also has to be a male, and you can take it from the sheep or the goat. Why sheep or goat? Because they're both part of the sacrificial system and represent of the sin offering. Let's go to the latter bullet. It says, you shall keep it till what? The 14th day of that same month. So the beginning of the year, select your lamb on the 10th day. Keep it till the 14th day. Keep in mind the words, the language, day. Then all of the assembly is to do what? Slay it between the evening. So here comes the evening to evening. That's a 24-hour period. So from the evening of the first day to the evening to the next evening starts the second day. From the evening of the second day to the evening of the third starts the third day. So evening always start a new day. From the evening till the morning is the first what? Day. So do you start at dusk and say, okay, that's the whole day? You know that it has not finished processing. The sunlight must come up to be a complete cycle going to evening. So if from evening to evening, it says the whole congregation must slay what? The lamb when? Between the evenings. So if we look at this, following the instructions, when should we slay the lamb? Between the evenings. The blood you put on the doorpost. What was salvation for the children of Israel during Egypt, the Egyptian captivity? If you put the blood on the doorpost, that meant salvation for your firstborn. Your firstborn got to live. All right, so, and they shall eat the flesh on that night. So when shall they eat the flesh of the lamb? So if we eat it between the evenings, do you wait till the next evening of the next night? You can't, because that's violation. Because from the evening, let's check the language once again. From the evening to the morning is the first day. So it says, you shall eat the flesh on that night. So the evening has come in, and what comes after evening? Nighttime. So that's when you eat the lamb. You eat the lamb on the night of the evening. So the evening signifies eat the lamb, because now nighttime is coming. Slay it between the evenings. So that means you only get one chance and one opportunity. Let's go back to the model. In the evening and in the morning is the first day. In the evening and in the morning is the 14th day. I just went all the way to the 14th day. Now you have the lamb on what day? The 10th day, right? So you selected the lamb on the 10th day, but you don't eat it till when? The night time of the 14th day. So the 14th day comes in. Then when evening comes in, now you eat the lamb, because night comes when you are to eat it. Eat the flesh on that what? Night. Roast it in fire. Now, let's test this out with unleavened bread. So, to me, this tells me when I start eating unleavened bread. Eat the flesh on that night. Now, some people teach you eat it, or leaven. Now I'm talking about leaven. Some people teach that, I'm kind of skipping to when do we cleanse our homes from leaven. Right here, is what tells when to have no leaven in my home. When? When I eat the lamb on that night. When do we eat the lamb? On what night? Now, here's a trick question. I'm gonna say it wrong, and then I'm actually gonna say it right. But when is Passover? And when do you eat the lamb? Do you eat it on the 14th? Or do you eat it on the 15th? In the evening and then in the morning is the 14th. So if you eat it in the evening of the 14th, then the 14th has now changed from the 14th to the 15th. So the 15th is actually the Passover. But when the evening comes in again, is now the Sabbath. So therefore, we don't eat. Therefore, the body of Yeshua has to be off of the stake before the Sabbath comes in. The Sabbath is not in on the evening of the 14th. That is Passover. It's not a Sabbath. But it says, eat the flesh on that night. So that night, when the evening comes in, on what night? You eat what? The lamb. Slay it between the evenings, just trying to make sure. Put the blood on the doorpost. All right, so therefore, you're eating because the lamb has no blood. So you eat the flesh on the night where you put the blood. You put the blood on the 14th. Your house is protected from the 14th on. From the 14th on. Now, what I just said was a little bit confusing. You eat the flesh on the 14th, the night of the 14th. But this is the daytime portion where you put the blood, the daytime portion, and it'll pan out in a few minutes as well. So the daytime portion of the 14th, you apply the blood. And so therefore, the flesh is being eaten nighttime. But nighttime brings in the next day. All right, let's look at it. Roasted in fire. Was Yeshua killed by fire? Roasted by fire? No. But this is what happens if any is left beyond that night to the next morning. Roasted in fire. And so therefore, we know that Yeshua was without sin. So therefore, that's why we have to eat on the nighttime of the 14th, unleavened bread. Now, if not, then its head with its legs, its inward parts, do not leave any of it until what? Morning. Why? Because the next evening has now changed from the 14th to the 15th. And what remains of it until morning, you are to burn with fire. Yeshua was not burned. I know that that's a little confusing, but it will, I have more coming. Exodus chapter 12, verse 9 through 16, and then here we have verse 18. So we're going to look at the blood on the door of your house. Blood, here's the sign. Blood on the door where you are. Why is this important? Because this is the sign that says, my firstborn, his salvation is the blood. All right, so let's read. Verse 9. And this is how you eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand. You shall eat it in haste. It is the Pesach of Yahweh, and I shall pass through the land of Mizraim on that night, and shall strike the firstborn in the land of Mizraim, both man and beast, And on all the mighty ones of Mizraim I shall execute judgment. I am Yahweh, and the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and let the plague not come on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Mizraim. So that means whether you're Hebrew or you're Egyptian, it doesn't matter. No blood, your firstborn is required. And this day shall become to you a remembrance. So this is why we now, Exodus chapter 12, Leviticus chapter 23, why we now do it as what? A remembrance. You shall celebrate it as a festival to Yahweh throughout your generations. Celebrate it as a festival, an everlasting law. So we do this forever. This is forever. This is a commandment. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause leaven to cease from your houses for whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that being shall be cut off from Israel. And on the first day is a set-apart gathering, and on the seventh day you have a set-apart gathering. No work at all is done on them, only that which is eaten by every being, that alone is prepared by you. Exodus chapter 12, verse 18. In the first month, on the 14th day, still talking about Passover month, of the new moon is in the evening. You shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the new moon in the evening. So, from the 14th day until the 21st day. So, let's do a little count. Let's verify. So, I want to stand out on verse 18 for a second. So that tells us of the Hebrew month, when to start eating unleavened bread. And let's count. It says 7 days you eat unleavened bread. All right, and that's verse 16. Verse 16. 7 days you eat, you have a set apart gathering. 7 days, right? No work is to be done, only that which is eaten by you or every being, that alone is prepared. I'll get to that part in a second. But let's go from the 14th day. 14. So let's just make it easy. Count 14 through 21. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, that's 7 days right there. 20, 21. That's how many days? 8 days. Let's count again. Let's make sure we got that correct. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. 7 days. 21. That's 8 days. So is there a problem with the 7 day command here? He says the first day we cause leaven to cease from our home, but it's not a Sabbath. That's Passover. But he says the first day. And so then he gave us numbers, numeric confirmation. He says from the 14th day. So when do we start Passover? He says count 14 days. Before he gets to the 14th day, he says select your lamb on what day? The 10th day. So you know where your 10th day is. Surely we should be able to count another 4 days. So the 10th day. So now let's start over from our 14th day. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I keep getting 8 days. So where is where is the conflict here? What is the problem? Then there is another Sabbath in here because the Sabbath is not, Passover is not a Sabbath. The next day is a Sabbath. Focusing in on the 14th, daytime period, but when the evening comes, now you have no leaven in your home. So the 14th day is your daytime portion, is your time of preparation. So when the evening comes, when we are commanded to eat the lamb, the calendar has now changed. It says from evening to evening. So if the calendar has now changed, and we can see it a little better on the other end, the 7th month. It says on the 10th day you fast. He said, but on the 9th day in the evening you start your fast. So if that's in the 7th month, then in the 1st month we see the same exact parallel where you start on the 14th in the evening, and it is really now the 15th. Now, let me show you. No work is done at all on them, only that which is eaten by every being. That alone is prepared by you. Some people say, here's two things I'm going to, let me finish the first thing first. So it says, no work is done on them. All right, so is Passover, for those who understand the feast days, a Sabbath? No. So he can't be talking about the 14th in the evening here. No work is done. It will not come until the next evening, which is now the evening of the 15th day. The 15th day leads us into the Sabbath, the evening of the...
Because the evening comes in first. So you're right.
Right.
15.
Right. But we have the 14th, then the daytime portion. This is what I had to back up to. The daytime portion of the 14th, because the evening leads the 14th.
Yeah.
So this is where it definitely gets confusing. But you got to really stay with it. So the daytime portion of the 14th leads into the evening, and then the evening leads into the daytime portion of the 15th. Now, when the 15th evening comes in, the Sabbath is going out. And so therefore, the Sabbath is on the 15th and not, excuse me. This is one of those, you really got to stay correct.
You were correct at first. Because the 14th evening coming in, it would look like the 13th, but it's the 13th day going out.
Right.
But it's the 14th evening coming in.
Right.
So once the 15th evening coming in is, then that's your unleavened bread, that's your Sabbath.
Exactly.
So you're right. Yeah.
So that's what we have as a judge, and Rabbis was just explaining. That's what we have to judge where we are. We know that when he says no work, he's talking about the Sabbath.
Right.
Passover is not a Sabbath.
Right.
Cut and dry. Cut and dry. Only that which is eaten by every being. So no work is done, that which is eaten. How do you eat? You eat after you cook, right? So here's another problem that some people deal with. No eating, no cooking on the Sabbath. And so I was just viewing somebody's comment in social chat just yesterday, and I thought about, going in and responding, but I said, people, but anyway, some people teach you cannot cook on the Sabbath. So if we're talking about a Sabbath, it says, no work at all is done on them. That describes a Sabbath. Only that which is eaten by every being, that alone you is prepared by you. How do you prepare it? What do? You prepare it and don't cook it? No, you prepare it, cook it, eat it. So that which is eaten. So therefore that argument that you cannot cook on the Sabbath does not hold up here. According to no work is done at all on the Sabbath, except what is eaten and alone is prepared by you.
Unless you prepare to sell it to somebody.
So again, we are looking at several things here, and again, Yeshua is all through this. So Exodus chapter 9, verse 29 through 33. And for those who want to verify again, just continue, go back and look at Exodus chapter 12 and just study that out. See whether it is correct or not. And Moshe said to him, as soon as I go out, we know he's talking to Pharaoh, as soon as I go out of the city, let me spread out my hands to Yahweh, let the thunder cease and the hail to be no more, so that you know that the earth belongs to Yahweh. But as for you, your servants, I know that you do not yet fear before Yahweh Elohim. And the flax and the barley were struck. For the barley was in the head, and the flax was in bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they were late crop. And Moshe went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread out his hands to Yahweh, and the thunder and the hail ceased, and the rain was not poured on the earth. So we know that this is during the plagues, the 10 plagues, and specifically the hail, the thunder. And so if we allow the events of that time, which is why we have to look at both Exodus chapter 12, Leviticus chapter 23 today, so that we see what was the actual and what is the remembrance. And so there is a slight division, but is Yahweh, Yeshua divided? No. But there is a difference between the two. Are we always having to come out of Egypt? That's kind of a trick question, yeah. But are we actually in Egypt? Is Israel actually still in Egypt? They were delivered. Now, are we having to be delivered? Yes, because we're still dealing with Egypt. We're still dealing with Asher, Babylon. Verse 9. And Moshe said to him, as soon as I go out of the city. So, who is he speaking to? We know that he's speaking to Moshe. Moshe is speaking to Pharaoh. It was in the writing. So the event of that time, which is the Passover, the telling the story, now we see that the flax and the barley, they were destroyed. Why? Because they were in the time of bud, where the flax and the barley are what you use to make certain dishes. The barley you use for the bread. The barley you use for unleavened bread. So it is a bread that is not yet ready for the maximum consumption, as wheat would be a more ready stage of bread. All right, so What is the difference now with wheat and spelt? They're both actually wheat, but different varieties of a wheat. I did look this up to just understand the difference between the two. Just different varieties. Flax also is a different variety of barley, whereas wheat and spelt, here is another issue that's floating for some of our Hebrew sisters and brothers. Some people say that the map had been turned upside down, everything happened in the southern hemisphere rather than the northern hemisphere. So the southern hemisphere, the northern hemisphere, climate-wise, they both get similar seasons. South Africa, snow, 4 seasons. Northern hemisphere, snow, 4 seasons. Egypt, southern, northern and southern differences. And so there's a argument that everything has been turned upside down. Everything that is spoken of in the northern hemisphere is really supposed to be in the southern hemisphere. Well, I found one difference that's not working in that scenario, which is the spelt. The spelt, and I think even the flax, the spelt, the flax, especially the flax. I know that for sure. It's been a while since I did this research. But I wanted to find out between these 4 different witnesses what grows in both the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. Well, they all grow except for the flax, and I think the spelt. Definitely the flax. It did not grow during that time. And only in the last 25 to 30 years has it been in the southern hemisphere, because they have now taken flax seed to the southern hemisphere and planted it. And so it now can grow there because it has been transitioned or transferred to the southern hemisphere. But the southern hemisphere imports all of their flax. Now we're going to look at John chapter 11, verse 5 through 9, and verse 14, which is in the bottom. And as I'm beginning to close out, we're going to look at the 12-hour day. And from my research, looking at the equinox, what is the equinox? It is a time that is really prevalent in certain parts of the earth. The equator, being that we live just above the equator, it gets really hot here. But twice a year we reach the equinox, and once we get to the equinox where there's equal 12-hour day, night, then there is no shadow. And how do we know this? Well, when the sun is directly above, and this is not according to man's clocks, because man's clocks, when you get to 12 o'clock, you see that the sun is not directly above. But this is the anatomic clock, the atomic time. When the sun is straight up, then it produces no shadow during the first equinox, and I'm not sure about the second equinox that comes later on. But and they're about 6 months apart. So this is what I look for, along with the 4 different species of seed. So let's begin with John chapter 11, beginning at verse 5. Now Yeshua loved Martha and her sister Elazar. Therefore, when he heard that he was sick, then indeed he stayed at the place where he was 2 more days. Then after this, he said to the taught ones, let us go back to Yehuda, Jerusalem. The taught ones said to him, Rabbi, the Yehudim were but now seeking to stone you. And are you going back there? Yeshua answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. Chapter 11, verse 14. So then Yeshua said to them plainly, Eleazar has died. So there's an issue that they are raising here. First issue is that when they received word from a messenger that Eleazar has died, it was 4 days out. And if we just add 6 and we'll see where I get the 6 from in just a moment. I have a scripture that we'll get to. But if we add 4 days and 6 days together, what do we get? 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 4 plus 6 equal 10. Right there. What do you select on the 10th day? The lamb. So we see that Yeshua is right in line, because right now they're asking for Yeshua. Why? Because his friend has died. And so verse 14, I wanted to verify that. They asked the question. They said, well, if he's only asleep, then he shall wake up. And, he'll be okay, right? But no, Yeshua is explaining. So I'm really condensing all of this conversation. So they're saying to him, if we go back 2 days later, so I wanted to make sure we have that, then indeed he stayed at the place where he was 2 more days. So if we take that 4, because he was dead. He was saying that he would come because that's his friend. But we know that we read where it says that he was told that his body is stinking by now because he's been in the grave for 4 days. So we know that if we take away 2 days, he's traveling, right? Because he stayed where he was at for 2 more days. Then after this, he said to the taught ones, let us go back to Yehuda or Jerusalem. So as we move through this, he says, are there not 12 hours in the day? What is he signifying here? The time and season that he's about to be crucified. What do you count when you get to the 14th day? You count 10 days, you select your lamb. Then you count 4 more days and you crucify him. When? In the evening, you eat the flesh. So if anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble. Who is a stumbling block? Yeshua. He is a stumbling block because he sees the light of this world. I am the light of the world. So here's Yeshua all through this. As I said, back in Genesis, he was all in this. And so he says quite plainly, Eleazar has died. And now Yeshua is going there to wake him up. So here's the establishment of the time element for us again. John chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. Accordingly, Yeshua 6 days before the Pesach came to Bethaniah where Eleazar was, who had died, whom he raised from the dead. So they made him a supper there, and Martha served, while Eleazar was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Miriam, Mary, took a pound of costly perfume of nard, anointed the feet of Yeshua, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Verse 9 through 11. Then then a great crowd of the Yehudim, Jews, learned that he was there, where? In Bethaniah, or Bethany, King James, at Miriam, Martha, and Eleazar's house. And they came not on account of Yeshua only, but also to see Eleazar, whom he had raised from the dead. And the chief priest resolved to kill Eleazar as well, because on account of him, Eleazar, many of the Yehudim went away and believed in Yeshua. So because he was raised from the dead, many went to see a man raised from the dead. So because they went to see this man who they know was dead, and then you also have to give acknowledgement to the one who raised him, which was Yeshua, the high priest, he resolved in his mind, let's kill them both. Why? Because Eleazar is a witness brought back from the dead. Yeshua is the one who raised him, as well as his family, who were witnesses that their brother was dead. Let's deal with the 6 days before. So if we look at 6 days before, we know that the scripture says he was 6 days before, and I may have to switch that 4 that I counted out before. It's just different ways you can approach it. If you use the 4, we know that we got the 4, but this is where I'm taking it from. 6 days, he got the message. And so if he got there 2 days later, you take 2 away from 6, you got 4. And you add 4 and that's 6. You put them back together, you still got 10. So it's just different ways that I'm looking at it. This is what I do, how I study. I look at things from different perspectives. If I add it this way, subtract it that way. If I add them back together, so this is just how I study. All right, so we know Yeshua is now a threat, and it is the 10th day that he is selected. So again, I'm using that 4, I'm using that 6, and if we use the lamb, when the lamb is supposed to be killed, here's a third way that I will check my numbers, and I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. So when is the lamb killed? On the 14th day. Why? You need the blood to put on the doorpost. We're talking Egypt, right? So the lamb is now dead, and you eat the flesh on the nighttime of the 14th, because the next day you come into the daytime portion of the 14th. All right, so let's count backwards, and I'm hoping I'm doing this correctly. So now, I'm going to do it both ways, because I already see if I don't do it both ways, it may not verify for some people. So I'm going to start at the 15th and count backwards. And we're going to verify 6 days before the Passover. So this is what I'm verifying now. So 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, that's 5 days, 10, that's 6 days. So what happens on the 10th day? The lamb is selected. So 6 days before the Passover, Yeshua, 6 days before Pesach, came to Beth Aniah. So it checks out. Let me start with the 14th. If we start at the 14th, it's not going to check out correctly. But, like I said, I like to look at it from all of these different aspects. I'm going to start on the 14th this time. 14, 13, counting backwards, 12, 11, 10, 9. So it's not going to check out if we start on the 14th, because we don't really eat the lamb until really the 15th. And so this is why I was saying, because it's the nighttime of the 14th, which brings in, let me go back there, because that's where we have to really look. And so again, I have to go back to previous teaching that I showed about the 13th and the events of the 13th. Right. But now I'm not going to bring in that, because that's going to kind of muddy up the water a little bit. But anyway, let's go on to the next. My last 2 slides, one more after this, and we're done. Notice how I'm working my way to Passover. We know that they were there on the 6th day. Now we're 2 days before Passover. 4 days have now elapsed again. 4 days have. So this is how I keep checking, check balance. All right, now the Pesach of the festival of Matzot, or unleavened bread, was after 2 days. And the chief priest and the scribes were seeking how to take him through treachery and put him to what? Death. So in 2 days, they're looking for Yeshua to be put to death. So you choose the lamb on the 14th day. So I'm going to count up now. I've not done this before, but I want to do it just to check. So you choose the lamb on the 10th day. But on the 14th day, he is to be killed. So if we count forward to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, the 21st day. So anyway, if that was a little bit confusing, I'm sorry. I have to think through these things and just show. We eat from when? The 14th through the 21st. Just cut and dry. Yahweh gave us the dates. So I'm going to just leave that right there. But Yeshua is to be put to death in 2 days. So it really checks out numerically, because his death is coming 2 days later, which is the festival of Matzot. And they said, not at the festival, lest there shall be an uproar of the people. So because he has done these things, bringing so many miracles, as well as raising Eleazar from death to life, they want to kill Yeshua, but not just kill him. They want to make him suffer through treachery. And so, as we see, the lamb was selected on the correct day, also slated to be killed on the correct day. So we're going to take a look at the feet and the Mount of Olives. Zechariah chapter 14, this is my last slide. Zechariah 14, verse 1 and 2. See, a day shall come for Yahweh and your spoil shall be divided in your midst. And I shall gather all nations to battle against Jerusalem. And the city shall be taken, the houses plundered, the women ravished, half the city shall go into exile, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off. There's a couple of things I want to recognize here before I move on. So, who's speaking? Yahweh. A day shall come for Yahweh. Your spoil shall be divided in your midst. Who is he talking to? Israel. I shall gather all nations to battle against Jerusalem. So Jerusalem at this point is slated for judgment. Why? Because of the sin and the defilement of the land. The city is taken, houses plundered, women ravished, half the city go into exile. But the remnant, who is this remnant? Well, it is actually twofold. He's talking about physical Israel that was there at that time. The remnant of them will escape. It says, shall not be cut off from the city. But half of it shall go into exile. So those who are in Jerusalem, who have defiled the land, half of it is going into exile. So we know that there is the Assyrian captivity, the Babylonian captivity. We know that there was the Egyptian captivity, and then the final one was the Roman captivity. And so which one are we talking about here? We're actually talking about the Roman captivity, because after that, the Mount of Olives come into view, because before it was the Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was during the time that Yahweh met with Israel at the mountain. And that's when he entered into a covenant, a marriage with Israel. But right here, the opening statement is, a day shall come for who? Yahweh. That Israel is going to be destroyed, the remnant will escape. But who is this remnant that escaped? They will be the same people that experienced the Mount of Olives return. Half of the city of those who settled in the land, those who were the second generation that went into the land, were at Mount Sinai. They are the ones that was exiled. So that's taking, if we're talking about leavened bread or bread that rises, if you take a little bit of leaven and you put it into a new loaf, guess what's going to happen? That new loaf is also going to become leavened because of the presence of just a little bit of leaven. So that's what we're looking at here. Not that it's the intent, but they have been leavened. But Yahweh is going to take a little bit of this, the remnant shall not be cut off from the city. He took a little bit to preserve. Even though they were defiled, but Yeshua took on our what? Our leaven, our sins. And as he took on our sins, I'm telling you, this is all in Genesis, where we were at chapter 1 and chapter 9. Exodus. Chapter 9, chapter 12. Let's go to the next. And in that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem. It was destroyed. But here it is again. On the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two, from east to west, a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall move towards the north, half towards the south. So we have an argument about two hemispheres, the north, the south, How does that play out? I don't want to say that half went to the southern or the northern hemisphere, the other half went to the southern hemisphere. Whether it did, whether that's just a fleeting thought, I don't know. It has to be, verified. Kind of run through the Torah to see. Point is that something happens because the land once again is defiled. Therefore, the master himself shall come down with the shout of the voice of the master. Those who have died in Yeshua shall be caught up to meet him. So therefore, that leaven of Israel still exists in the earth. And so that leaven, that wherever they are in the earth, has to go back to the land. But those who are in the land, under the name of Jerusalem, Israel, has to be cleansed again. Why? Because the master himself is coming down, because they have divided my land and sold my people. So Zechariah 14, verse 6 through 7. That was verse 4. Verse 4 we just finished. Verse 6 through 7. And in that day it shall be, there is no light, it is dark. And it shall be one day which is known to Yahweh, neither day nor night. But at evening time there shall be light. Let there be light. Light when? When there's darkness. So it's neither day nor night. So this is why it's important to follow the instructions, because when shall the master step on the Mount of Olives? Evening time. It's neither day nor night. Well, that speaks about evening. So if that's the case, then who is actually going to stand on the Mount of Olives? Well, when Yeshua was here, he was standing on the Mount of Olives, teaching the called out ones, the disciples, and as he was teaching them, they was talking about the temple, and he was teaching them how not one stone would remain on another. And so these are signs, he's saying, that you will know the return. And so they said, say plainly to us, when shall these things be? And so he's explaining, and in that we understand that he will return and he will stand on the Mount of Olives. But wait a minute. Zechariah says, Yahweh, a day is coming for who? Yahweh. Well, we've been teaching long enough that Yahweh is Yeshua, Yeshua is Yahweh, and there once again is another piece of evidence. Whose feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives? Yahweh. But the flesh will be Yeshua. Can we give Yahweh a praise? Hallelujah. All right, hallelujah. This is the more